Yo, check this out. This is Wayne Wonder, representing for Warieka LTV. You see the vision, don't it? See the vision. Warieka LTV. Keep it locked.
No, I'm gonna tell you. We as bloggers, these are the issues that we need to address. You understand what I said? You see? Set the path for the youth. Share, like, and subscribe and stay tuned to the channel. I don't know all this. Yes, I. Greetings once again in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. You know, see. So, want to say welcome all viewers and subscribers. Seen? I want to say viewers, if you like the content, subscribe and help grow the channel. I don't know. We are trying. Share certain knowledge and create a certain level of thinking amongst the youth, you know? So, we'll continue with the book, reading from the book, Death Row. See? And this, with their chapter 11. See? And I want to name Escape Plan. See? Pardon me, my nose has scratched me. The ear them a joke me night. Alright, chapter 11, Escape Plan. The executions continued. Jocelyn Marks, Alfonso Ferran, and Old Roy Edwards were killed. Almost everyone on the row then had lost more than one appeal. Most had lost all three and were waiting to die. The goons were once again raiding the row at night. Hunger strikes came one after the other, but only brought temporary redress. As soon as the goons' sadistic urge pricked them, they launched a raid. Petitions sent to the church and state were out of no gain. And by then, the goons had almost completely blocked our mails and visits. Fear, a fear that promoted desperation, became more conspicuous in the movement on the row. In my own case, I had forwarded the required information to the UN Commission on Human Rights and was assured in reply that they were working on the case. The petition sent to the Governor General on my behalf by Amnesty International and another represented and signed by hundreds of the citizens of my community did not evoke any positive response from the local Privy Council. Escape seemed the only alternative, and so I directed new efforts in this direction. I was not unique in my conclusion and desire. Gibraltar was certainly no cup of tea, more so since Brian's escape. 2 sentries were now posted at the rear end of the passage with an uninterrupted view of every cell door and the entire passage. One was armed with a sidearm. The ventilators at the rear of the cell were blocked up with the remaining space too small to contain a human. The other possible way of leaving the cell was through the door and past the goons on the way out. But how? But how? For weeks we pondered how to get out. Of course, Winston was with me, but I wasn't making my break with more than a party of 5. I wasn't going to venture in the yard with 26 prisoners because I didn't believe such a crowd could make it. Finally, a plan evolved and was cemented. Only hacksaw blades were needed. We were relying on our pooled intelligence, determination, and desperation against the goons' indiscipline, corruption, and complacency. Money was not uncommon on the row. The goons knew it was there in as much as they knew the entire prison was perverted with hustling. If while doing any of the twice daily searches a goon happened to find some money in your cell, his reaction was predictable. If it was a small sum, less than $1, he would fume with indignation, and the others had to tear this goon off of you. If the money was a sum over $2, it would give no indication that he had found a breach of regulation in your cell. He would move around aimlessly inside the cell, pocket your cash, and declare your cell clean. If the goon was stupid enough to declare his losses, no way. If the con was stupid enough to declare his losses, no way he can escape a mashing up. Greedy bastards. No matter how they hate and brutalize prisoners, a can still buy them out. Goons are goons. It was therefore no great problem in getting the blades the next week at the cost of over $150. Immediately, we got the blades. We began working. Brian disclosed where he had hidden his blades during his period of working, and we used this safe spot. Here, the blades were safe from even the metal detector. Our plan was to work only at night so that no one else on the row would know what was going on. Our plan was that once we had the doors cut, we would bring the rest of the inmates into the picture. If they wanted to come, they could come after. With this plan in mind, we worked away at nights on the bars. One night I was working when I noticed some movements coming from Shorty's cell. I continued working while peering to discover what he was about. He was lying on the floor looking straight at me. When our eyes met, he smiled across the dark passage. I finished working, but I put away my blade and went to sleep. Tomorrow I would deal with him. Next day I reported sick. During the sick break, I went to Shorty's cell door. He was standing at the bars. How much eyes you have, Shorty? What happened, man? He asked as if he knew. Do you always peep at people's business in the night? What kind of business, man? Okay, so you don't know. Okay, the next time I see you peeping in my business, I'm going to poke out your eyes. Don't forget that, see? Freddy, alright, but I am now informer. The man can depend on me. He was getting emotional and the goon was looking. Okay, Shorty, but don't forget that what I say. The goon came down the passage and I moved on. After the doctor break, I lay in my cell and considered Shorty. Most of the others trusted him and I felt there was no danger in his knowing of our plan. Still, whether he would inform on me or not, we could only continue. From the moment we had cut the first bar, we were committed. It was at this point that a bizarre development brought the whole operation to a standstill. The very next day, after I had spoken to Shorty, was just like any other day on the row up to breakfast time. As soon as breakfast was over, the Funk and his posse entered the row. With him was a character called Scaramucci. He was a black born and Goya Jamaican who probably didn't know further than Montego Bay. Yet he spoke with a deep American Southern accent. Through my watching, I had seen their approach and almost went into panic. The Funk, Scaramucci, and the Death Squad. These sadists never turn out in full colors unless there was blood on the agenda. Had they discovered our doings? Had Shorty spit on us? Was it I they were coming for? Hastily I glanced to see that the blade was concealed and the bars of the door visibly intact. Spreading out in the passage, they came down looking at the same plates on the doors. The place was graveyard quiet except for the civil service squeak of the goons' boots. At this one, the Funk cried, pointing at Shorty's cell. The posse moved together around the door. Still, I was convinced that this posse was here consequent to our work. But wait, Scaramucci was reading the death warrant. Yes, there was the big black velvet seal of the Governor General. This meant death. They were going to hang Shorty. Scaramucci finished reading and the cell was open. Shorty was handcuffed and moved away to the condemned cells. He had no more appeal. They were going to kill him. Again, the debate was about Shorty. They were certainly going to kill him now, and he was supposed to understand this. Would our secret remain safe with him in his new position? Would he barter our plan for official clemency? Nobody could be sure, and we all felt very uneasy. People preparing to flee from death are not inclined to trust their passage to a man in Shorty's position. However, we could do nothing but work and hope that Shorty wouldn't give away our plans. The day started to creep. How the hell did they suddenly slow up so much? Creeping. By the 4th day after Shorty's departure, one cell was completely cut through. On the 6th day, a second was completed, and still there was no indication that Shorty had spit. On the 7th day, they hanged him. After a midday break, the cart was hauled past Gibraltar. I went on the ventilators to gaze at the burial at the far end of the football field. Thanks, Shorty. Using a mixture of cooked rice, soap, and the dust from the cut in the bars, the cuts were neatly concealed to deceive the naked eye. The original plan was shelved. No way could a small group leave the rest behind. Everybody on the road knew that something was on, and everybody wanted a piece of the action. We held a council, and the original plan was shelved for a far more dangerous plan. Now, it would involve 24 of us. Michael Bernard and Ansel Vassell said they didn't want to be involved. By December, we were all prepared for the move, and there was only one problem. The 2 sentries on the doors operated on the principle that whenever a summons came from inside the row, only one would venture inside. The one remaining outside had the gun. The only way to get around this was to wait until only one goon was there. The first time they posted a solo sentry, there we would seize the opportunity. It was not until Boxing Day, 26 December 1974, that the opportunity came around and was seized at 10:30 p.m. on Boxing Day. Only one sentry reported to Gibraltar for the graveyard shift. A goon named Selvin Clark. This was it. 15 minutes later, when he was not reinforced, we were certain he would do the shift alone. It was now. Quickly, quietly, everybody was aroused, and the bars completely severed from the doors of those who were to move out first. The thing now was to get the sentry inside the passage. Someone down the passage called out to him and politely asked for some water. Nothing strange about this. It happened almost every night. "What number cell you in?" he asked, and got an immediate reply. We waited with drawn breath. The jingling of the keys as he opened the gates, the echoes of his footsteps as he came down the passage, were sweet music. On reaching the cells, where the con had asked for a drink, he bent down to pour the water through the bars. Before he had emptied the water, 4 prisoners were standing over him with drawn knives. Dropping the drug, fear and panic crowding his face. He came to his feet, pulling his ratchet. Before he could fly his knife or make an alarm, he was our hostage. Quickly he was gagged, tied, and moved down the passage. So far, so good. Another brother was busily breaking locks from the doors, making a noise that carried far into the night. Simultaneously, another was locking the gates and securing them with the locks taken from the doors. Someone shouted that the goons were coming. The high-pitched sound of whistles came from every end of the prison. A brother came running towards me. Freddy, what happened?" I asked his excited face. "You want to see?" 2 men gone through the gate, you know. What? A couple of others that gathered around, and I scanned the faces trying to make out who was missing. Is who them? I asked. Wow, and Kenyan, he answered. And the warders, them a come, he added, pointing towards the entrance. All of us moved to see what was going on. About 4 goons came running towards Gibraltar armed with automatic shotguns, pausing to break off the locks and the gates of the wire fence perimeter that surrounded Gibraltar. They took stock of the situation. Suddenly, a shotgun began blasting away to the rear of the building. The goons at the gate broke in. One had come over the fence. Immediately, and on entering the compound proper, they opened fire. Somebody turned off the lights while we scurried for cover, hostage and all. What an irony it would be if, while struggling to save my life, an unknown goon should blow off my head. When the gunfire eased, we let them know that they might very well shoot their co-worker, who up to then was safe, that we didn't intend to harm him or leave the building, that we wanted to see the director. The message seems to have reached them, and they went easy on the trigger. One, a senior warder, left the others and ran towards the office. The place was in darkness, but it was safer so. Soldiers and riot squad police had arrived. All around were white helmets and khaki-clad figures, armed with automatic rifles, moving about the place. The building was ringed with soldiers, while some standing on some platform or others were trying in vain to focus a huge searchlight down the passage. Eventually they gave up. At no time was there any intention of harming the hostage. His life was our lives, and his death our death. If he was harmed, if we harmed him, we would no longer have cause, for then we would surely be murdered. Without him in there, Babylon would have turned on submachines, gone down the passage, and waste us all. His life was more important than all of ours. If in the process of the plan one of us died, it would be a tragedy of the situation. But if the hostage died, the entire situation would be tragic for all of us. The director came, shoving through the crowd, coming up the steps until he was at the end of the passage, with only the heavy bars and the locked gate separating us. A note had been prepared demanding to see the Prime Minister, the chairman of the Jamaica Council for Human Rights, and the chairman of the Jamaica Council of Churches, and 2 journalists. I handed the note to the director. "Where is the warder?" he asked after reading the note. "Him down the passage," I answered, pointing down the passage, while he strained his eyes trying to see. "I want to see him." "Who turned out the lights?" "Who turned out the lights, Director?" I said. "Director," I said, "you can't see him because the place is dark and the lights not turning on. If you want to talk to him, shout and him will hear you. But we're not releasing him till the PM comes." He was looking at me now. "Is you take over the place, Mr. Mario Hector?" he asked. "See that the PM gets our message." I moved down the passage away from him. The director was enraged. He had never seen anything like this in his life. It was history, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Grabbing a bullhorn from a cop, he bawled down the passage. "Now listen to me. Silence! I don't know what you people expect to gain from this thing, but it just won't work. You can't be more powerful than the government. I am begging you all peacefully to release the warder. Take my advice and return to your cells. I am going to count to 10, and after the count, we are coming in there, and nobody can say that they were not warned." The man was crazy. Did he think we sad our way out of these cells to be sweet-mouthed back into them by a director of prison who was himself a foundation member of Babylon? The guy was crazy. Nobody answered him. Okay then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The ring around the hostage grew tighter and tighter. 8. Director, a can named Green, was talking. Yes? Silence. I tell you this, and I mean it. A whole heap of people going dead if you open that gate and come in here. Myself and the warder here going dead. All of the prisoners them in here going dead. And if you go and lead the posse coming here, you going dead too. Silence. 9. We're not letting go the water, the director asked again. No answer. He made an about turn and shoved through the crowd. With the departure of the director, we assumed that he had gone about the business of the north. We settled down to wait. A long wait of more than 6 hours of tension and excitement. There was no one among us who did not experience some fear in the course of that night. There were too many possibilities inimical to our intent and interest. There was the fear that the soldiers, heavily armed and all around the building, would try to rush us under the cover of tear gas or some other weapon of the kind we couldn't counter. Suppose they decided to use snipers and pick us off. The fear made some of us into animals that night. Desperate things. Desperate beings. There were only 7 knives on the row, not counting the goons ratchet. Outside were armed soldiers and goons. Between us were too many dangerous possibilities, but a greater fear, the fear of the gallows, propelled us along. During the wait, we listened to a transistor radio we had got from Raps the day before, hoping to hear some news of the incident. The hostage by then was less frightening. I had taken time to explain to him our objective and assured him of his safety. After a while, he wanted a smoke. Since the situation was now clear, I cut the ropes off his hands. When he was taken hostage, he was searched and all the contents of his pocket handed to me. There was his ratchet, $46, his ID, a wallet, and a cigarette pack containing, not cigarette, but the real stuff. He was in no mood to get high, so we used the stuff to cool off the night. He got cigarettes. Periodically, a fresh group of soldiers arrived at the entrance to the passage to inquire about the goon's health. They would shout to him and he replied. After exchanging brief words, they would move on. Sometimes a brother would jump on the ventilator to peep outside. Every time a head came up, a shot echoed in the night. Surprisingly, the soldiers were not hostile once they learned what we were about and that the water was safe. Some of them passed the time rapping with us. A couple actually wished us success and they were sincere. Long into the night, the warder complained that he was hungry. A brother gave him an orange but he was still hungry and mentioned that he had some food in his locker. I went to the top goon at the gate and relayed the message. The man kept staring at me as if he thought I wanted the food. You bringing the food for the warder, sir? I asked. He relayed it to a warder and went off. A couple of minutes later, he returned with a sandwich, which I took through the bars and a cup of coffee. I passed them to our hostage. This incident again further decreased the hostility among the security forces towards us. Only the goons were still huffing and puffing. They continued their vigilance and we added a couple more locks to the gate and waited. The first news report of the morning noted the incident and that the PM had been contacted. The sun was nowhere, but the clean smell of the night didn't go away under the stink and pollution of the prison coming awake. This morning, the prison was awake. Few had slept through the night, but nobody was coming out of the cells this morning. History was in the making. Around 5:30, the sound of a helicopter hovering over Gibraltar brought everybody to their feet. A soldier told us that the PM had arrived. We followed the sound of the copter as it came down at the adjoining prison oval. Dawn was breaking, and for the first time since I came on death row, I was able to feel the inherent hope and optimism that morning were all about. Jano. Yo. It not done. So the business. So we're going to talk about the business. We're at chapter 12 right now. Seeing? The business. Because that's the escape. We're talking about the business. 4 soldiers remained on the landing. All the rest had gone towards the oval. I was standing, leaning against the rail, rapping with one of the soldiers when the Prime Minister suddenly appeared at the top of the stairs not 2 feet away, followed by Father Alwyn Harry, Dr. Lloyd Barnett, Chairman of the Jamaica Council for Human Rights, and the Reverend R.I. Nelson of the Jamaica Council of Churches. Good morning, sir. Recovering my voice. Good morning, replied the Prime Minister, echoed by the others. Immediately, they were peering down the passage at the scene. Mattresses from the cell were torn and the kaya scattered about the place. Down in the middle of the passage, Wada Clark sat between 2 brothers armed with knife, his feet securely tied. The cell doors were thrown open and pieces of broken locks and metal were scattered over the wall. One brother had the goon's hat on and a riot button stuck in his waist, and there was nothing on the faces of the youth that moved about the passage to suggest a joke. What are you boys up to? Where is the water? Asked the Prime Minister. Nobody come with them boy business there, here, sir, interjected a brother at the rear. Well, sir, I began, we are just demonstrating against a condition of injustice and oppression, and doing so in such a manner because all other methods and channels have failed. The water is down the passage safe and sound. All we want is to put our predicament before you and have you initiate the necessary machinery toward us redress. Are you the spokesman? Yes, sir. All right, I am here. Release the water and I will discuss the matter with you afterwards at the office. However, I make you no promise except that there will be no reprisal. I will not talk with you until the water is released. With that, he was gone, leaving behind Reverend Nelson and Dr. Lloyd Barnett. Immediately upon his departure, a serious incident arose, contingent on the conditions set by the Prime Minister. A serious incident arose contingent on the condition set by the Prime Minister. Some were dead against releasing the hostage until after we had spoken to the Prime Minister. It could be a trick, they advanced. After all, were we not dealing with Babylon? It could be a trick to deceive us from our position. One guy now deceased moved towards the hostage threatening to kill him. If we hadn't held and disarmed him, who knows what he might have done. We decided to have a vote over it. Reverend Nelson saw the happenings and called me. Mario, I know you can influence these men. If anything happened to the water, you are responsible. So, why me, Reverend? I asked. Because I know you can bring him out. I am advising you to go down there and bring him out. The Prime Minister is here. He has given his word. Bring out the water. I give you my word that your grievance will be heard. Why me, Ref? I asked again, but didn't get a reply. I was thinking about our position, and it was true. The Prime Minister had come. He had given his word and was awaiting words from us. It would be unnecessarily provocative to press our hand. Of course, it could be a trick, but that was a gamble we would have to take if we were to gain our objective. I returned to the council. The vote was in favor of releasing the hostage, and 5 of us, not 3, would go to see the Prime Minister after our departure. The rest would go see the Prime Minister. After our departure, the rest would lock themselves in and wait our return. An agreement reached. The hostage was untied. I returned his belongings, money, ratchet button, and his cap. The locks were taken from the gates, and our little group stepped out in the sunlight. The gates slammed shut behind us. We came out in a ring around the water. He was still our ticket, and we wanted him where we could reach him before the crowd of goons could reach us. In this manner, we proceeded towards the office, surrounded by a huge crowd of soldiers, police, and goons. Prisoners were on their cell tops shouting down to us as the procession went by. Tell Michael Manley, said the boy, Tom Surridge is a sadist. Go away, police boy. Don't make him trick your Freddy. The shouts were antagonistic to the goons, especially. One rushed from the crowd and slammed a baton across my shoulder. Immediately, an arm went around Wada Clark's neck, holding a wicked-looking knife. It was a standoff. The prisoners in the cell kept shouting insults at them. A top officer intervened and the procession moved on. This time, the arm with the knife remained around the goon's neck. If they killed us, then he would also die. Finally, we were at the office entrance where we were separated from the crowd. The knife was taken from the brother and we were searched and sent upstairs. Upstairs, we were searched and given seats to await the Prime Minister. Our chaplain, Father Harry, was there. We were in the superintendent's office. Soon afterwards, the Prime Minister came in, shook hands all around, and was seated in the superintendent's chair. Behind him stood his security man. To his left was his wife. On his right was some police bigwigs, the commissioner, Tom Surridge, and this man, Smith, who was the Prime Minister's advisor. Behind us stood a row of cops, while Father Harry, Reverend Nelson, and Dr. Barnett stood behind us. Business began. We were invited to state our argument. As the disengaged spokesman, I began. As the designated spokesman, I began. In my own layman way, I outlined the inherent injustice in law and judiciary, dealt with the unconstitutionality of my own sentence and 7 others on the row. I outlined the Michael Bernard case, the goons' night raids, the nonchalance of church and states to our cries of injustice, and the brutality, degradation, and repression to which we were collectively subjected. The Prime Minister's wife was crying openly. She had never been exposed to such a situation and seemed unaware that such conditions, as I explained, existed in Jamaica. We had their rapt attention. One after the other, all 5 of us explained the sorrows and suffering of our predicament, and it was plain that they were all touched by our accounts. The room was tension-packed as we exposed the gruesome facts of our existence. No stone was left unturned. The Prime Minister for this part explained his government's position on human rights and oppression, expressed sympathy for conditions. After his usual political rhetoric, we got down to the main point. How could redress be promoted? We had come well prepared for that. as soon as it came around to my turn to speak, I stated our position. Sir, whether or not you wanted, you could not reduce yourself not to this volume of problem. We believe that there is only one thing to be done. We would like a commission of inquiry to investigate our individual cases of the collective situation. It is of great importance that this commission be of people that we can trust, people near to the life of the people and our suffering. We would like Reverend Nelson, Dr. Barnett, and Father Harry to be included in this commission. We can trust these people and they know the problems. The Prime Minister said something to Dr. Barnett and returned to us. Very well. I shall look into the matter and you will be informed of my decision. In the meantime, I want you boys to go back to your cells and behave yourselves. With that, he rose from his seat, signaling the end of the meeting, and came around to us. Once again, he shook hands all around, followed by his wife. Afterwards, the Prime Minister went to address the goons, and we were returned to the row. On the way back, prisoners on every block were on the cell tops, showing clutched fists and shouting slogans. On the row, our return sparked a great excitement. The brothers opened the gates to the passage and poured out on us. Everybody wanted to shake our hands and find out what happened. After we relayed the good news, a shout went up, and for the first time I noticed everyone was smiling. From the very beginning, there were many interests that sought to deliberately misrepresent this intent of purpose of our action. The press claimed that it was an abortive attempt by prisoners to break out of the Gibraltar maximum security block, and that the motor cars to rush escapees out of the old capital were moving around the prison area an hour before the discovery. Director Godsmore said we were trying to break out en masse, and that our primary aim was probably to overcome the night staff and have a massive breakout. There were even some stupid ones who claimed our aim had been to kill the warder. The Honorable Michael Manley, Prime Minister, announced that steps had been taken to set up a commission of inquiry to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. The commission was duly appointed with a term of reference to inquire into and report upon the causes and circumstances surrounding the incident, which occurred at St. Catherine District Prison on the 27th of December 1974, involving the inmates on the high security block, and to make such recommendation as may be considered appropriate thereto. The Commission of Inquiry was headed by Dr. Lloyd Barnett, with Reverend R.I. Nelson, Lieutenant Colonel Clark Jameson being the other members. Mr. Paul Dobson was named secretary. When 1974 came to a close, at least we now had something to hope for in 1975. From the very moment our delegation returned from the discussion with the Prime Minister, we were all conscious that the relationship between staff and prisoners had deteriorated to open hostility. It was the general opinion of the goons that we had committed the worst sin, an act of collective blasphemy, that we had, by our demonstration, attacked them personally by attacking the penal system. The prison service was their life, past, present, and future. The cells and bars and buttons and corruption that was the prison had become an extension of their collective personality. To say anything against their precious prison was like kicking them in the ass with an iron boot. They were outraged at what we had done and vowed to the gods that they would have their brutal revenge. The only thing that held them back was the upcoming commission of inquiry. None of them wanted their names brought before the commission, and they knew we wouldn't hesitate to bring any evidence of their sadism before the inquiry. Like vultures, they watched and waited. One day the inquiry would end. The prisoners, on the other hand, saw the whole thing as a big victory. For years, Babylon, the whole damn perverted system, via its rules, regulations, norms, and goons, had been sucking our lifeblood, torturing us, brutalizing and hanging us when they dragged away Sinclair, Reed, Ferran, Marks, Edwards, Glenn, Shorty, and the rest of the gallows. It was our backs that bore the wealth and scars of the night raids, our souls that were arrested, hammered about, and chained by the rules, norms, and goons, our presence that was being strangled, our future made into nothing by this archaic and repressive system. So we had rebelled, and none of us had any regrets. The fact that the goons construed our demonstration as a brutal kick in the ass was not worrying. They had been needing more than a kick in the ass for years. That we had delivered a kick and the hurt was not a worrying thought. Far by then, the entire penal system had moved into the worst violent wave of protests in its history. Yeah, so chapter 13 of protests. So we read chapter 13 next. You just see it. So we're going to stop it there, so. For now, you know, and continue later on. So give thanks again, you see it. Share, like, and subscribe. Mad love and respect.